Kern. That is Blake Hartsfield. Blake, victory week. We didn't get to record last week, so this is a double victory week for the Red Raiders. Ring those victory bells as the Red Raiders are now 5-1, just one win away from bowl eligibility, and more importantly, 3-0 in the Big 12. We're going to cover the game that had us up way past our bedtime this past weekend. But first, let's go back 2 weeks ago as Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce had quite the bet on the line there for Cincinnati versus Tech as Cincinnati came to Lubbock. It was a wild one. It was a shootout. It was 85 points, I believe, 44-41. The Red Raiders take down the victory. And old Travis Kelce had to go on new heights wearing Raider red.
Saw that, TJ. It was a good bet payoff there from Mahomes with the Red Raiders winning. You hit a lot of the high points there, TJ. 5-1, 3-0 in the Big 12. We're going to get to this Arizona game. But they put in a performance against Cincinnati. They finish off that 2-game opening homestand with 2 victories. And TJ, look, I know we're not going to spend a lot of time on Cincinnati. We just wanted to touch on it because we weren't able to record last week. But I will die on the hill that, and there's another hill that I'm going to die on later in this podcast. But I will die on the hill that the way that they responded to falling behind early in that game was season changing. And it proved that this team has turned a corner a little bit under Joe McGuire. The culture is very clearly there. We've talked about it in the past. We saw signs of it last year. We were questioning it after the Washington State game, but look, they found themselves in a hole. They were down 14-3 early in that game in the first quarter. Things could have gotten sideways pretty quickly. I think Cincinnati scored in like 7 plays over the 2 drives, a bunch of big plays. The defense looked lost, but to their credit, they answered. They did win a shootout. The offense was outstanding that night, TJ. I thought Baron Morton was really, really good against Cincinnati. Probably his best game as a Red Raider, in my opinion. I thought he was outstanding that night. He only finished with 2 touchdowns, but he was also robbed of a touchdown because Coy Eakin can't catch the football on a wide open pass in the end zone. But other than that, I mean, the offense was humming, 44 points. And they took care of business. They beat a good Cincinnati team. So,
you know, that Cincinnati team, we kind of talked about it. They were sneaky good. We weren't sure exactly what to expect from them, but we knew that they had a chance to put up points, especially with the way the defense had been playing. And up until this point, Blake, we hadn't seen very much out of this defense. And winning a game 44-41, it seemed like was going to be the norm. But we've had confidence in this offense when Taj Brooks is in the game.
They delivered.
They score up. They put 44 up on the board.
And Taj had a good game against Cincinnati. I mean, 32 for 132 totes, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bread and butter of the offense. I mean, money as always. There's not much to say about Taj other than he continues to get the job done and creep up that all-time rushing list.
So the Red Raiders, like we said, did get the victory at home against Cincinnati. They improved their record at home in the McGuire era, I believe, to 16-3, Blake.
Yeah, they've been very good at home, TJ. We've talked about that, but the question mark was always, can they go on the road and replicate that performance? And we finally got that this past weekend.
That we did. We had to stay up way, way late. Kickoff was after 10 o'clock Central Standard Time as they went on to take on the Arizona Wildcats. And Blake, I don't know what happened, but my guy Tim DeRuyter, well done. He had some blitzes. We got some pressure on the quarterback. And my thing with this defense is I trust the offense to score. I think the defense needs to be aggressive, and they're going to have to rely on some takeaways. And boy, did we get some takeaways on Saturday.
They did, TJ. 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery. Let's start with the defense because they absolutely deserve us talking about them for a change this season. Outstanding against Arizona. That defense holds a very good offense. And look, Fafita is a good quarterback. A team that had gone into Utah the week prior and won at Utah. Utah was the favorite in the league according to Vegas. So the fact that Arizona had gone into their house and beaten Utah, told me that they were a really good football team. We thought they were good before that game, but that confirmed to me that they weren't just good; they were very good and a contender in the Big 12. And TJ, this defense went in there and shut them down. I mean, they hold them to 3 points in the first half. They did give up 19 in the second half. I don't think that was entirely their fault. A couple of short fields from 𝗧𝗛𝗡 fumbles, which is unusual. The first one was kind of a shock. The second one, you're kind of going, what the heck's going on? And then, frankly, TJ, in that second half, this offense in the third quarter didn't get a single first down. So the defense was on the field the entirety of the third quarter and most of the fourth quarter. They still held them to 19 points. They stiffened up in the red zone and saved some field goals instead of touchdowns. TJ, they were physical at the point of the attack. They hit Fafita all night long, and they hit him hard. And I think that wore him out over the course of the game. And can't say enough good things about that group. They seem to be getting better each week. I know the week before against Cincinnati, they got torched a little bit, but I think you and I both agree they've gotten significantly better as the year has gone on from what we saw against ACU and Washington State in the first 2 weeks.
No doubt about that. And man, these linebackers, Ben Roberts, and how about Jacob Rodriguez with the game he had the other night?
I mean, take a bow, right? Those two guys were wrecking balls. They were flying all over the field, making plays. And I'm not taking anything away from those two guys. I thought they were obviously the two best players on the defense on Saturday night. Between hitting the quarterback, getting pressure, stopping the run, everything that they were doing, TJ. But I don't think you can talk about how good those two were without first mentioning this defensive line. For the first time all year, they were able to get pressure. They were able to get a push with 4. We did bring some blitzes, but they were getting pressure more than they had all year. They were taking on double teams and freeing up those 2 linebackers to run around and make plays. So credit to the entire unit, but you are not wrong. Those 2 linebackers had outstanding nights on Saturday.
Yeah, 28-22 was the final out there in Tucson. The game started on Saturday, ended on Sunday. And Blake, doesn't matter what day it is, this offense can put up some points, can't they? Again, our boy 𝗧𝗛𝗡, 128 yards and 3 tutties.
Yep, he had a good game other than the 2 fumbles in the second half. But he bounced back. He had the big run at the end of the game that kind of put the game to bed. And I'm not going to sit here and beat Taj up for a couple of fumbles. I think I was frustrated watching the game. I'm like, how in the world does he fumble it a second time? But he's their best player on offense, or most consistent player on offense. I still think the best player is Barron, because when Barron is clicking, this offense is pretty much unstoppable. And you know what you're going to get from Taj week in and week out. But I thought Barron had another really good game, TJ. The quarterback rating I don't necessarily agree with, but 17 of 29, 214 yards, took care of the football, no interceptions, no fumbles. And he seems to keep this offense moving other than their bad third quarter. And look, at the end of the day, they found a way to win a game. And if you'd have told me that they were going to find a way to win a game on the road, in a game that 𝗧𝗛𝗡 puts the ball on the ground twice in the second half, I would have called you crazy, but they found a way. And at the end of the day, a win's a win.
Win's a win. Like we said at the top, Red Raiders are now 3-0 and alone in first place in the Big 12 Conference, the new Big 12 Conference. And it's anybody's ball game, Blake. This is going to be a lot of fun going down the stretch.
Yeah, TJ, they have a bye week this week. And so obviously we get to sit back and put our feet up and watch the carnage unfold around the rest of the league. But you start to look at the rest of this schedule, right? They've played 6 games. They're 5-1, 3-0 in the Big 12. TJ, it's hard to look at this schedule and not get excited. And they are legitimate, and I mean legitimate Big 12 contenders at this point. The win at Arizona absolutely solidifies that.
And I know in our very first episode of the season, we went through, we were like, win, right? Like, I
this
think
one is a loss.
We both, but I don't think either one of us had us at 5-1 at this point. It was possible, but man, you got to give credit to McGuire and got to give credit to Blake. I said Blake Kitley, Zach Kitley.
Still have some complaints. Still have some complaints with Kitley, but you do have to tip your hat.
Yeah. So I mean,
As frustrating. Go ahead.
Ultimately, they're doing what they need to do to win football games. They're not turning the ball over as much. Taj did have those fumbles there that uncharacteristic of him. He did pass. He's in third place now on the all-time Red Raider list. So congrats to Taj Brooks again. We're going to be saying congrats to Taj all the way to number 1 here soon. But that being said, Blake, let's have a little fun. There was a Micah Hudson play.
I know he came in and made a play. TJ, it's a novel concept, and it just continues to frustrate me with that. Well, he should have. That should have been a second touchdown of the year. It just, that play further evidences my frustration with Kitley and McGuire over this whole Hudson situation, right? Especially when you got McGuire. We've talked about this press conference where he said, "Oh well, Eakin and Douglas and Josh Kelly are too good to come off the field, and you can't get Mike Hudson on there." Okay, but you can. He can make plays for you, and I guess we're just going to ignore the drops from the other receivers because drops are becoming an issue on this team. They were an issue against Cincinnati. I talked about Eakin. Another big drop the other night against Arizona. Caleb Douglas had a great game against Arizona, right? He ends up finishing that game with 5 for 116, a couple of big plays down the sideline, but also had a couple of drops. I just don't understand why we can't get Micah into the offense. And look, I'm giving Kitley credit, right? I'm not a Kitley believer. I'm still not sold, but at the end of the day, as frustrating as it is with the offense, and it seems to come in waves. Like they look good, and then they go through these stretches where it's like they look like a high school offense playing against college defenses. But at the end of the day, they're number 1 in the Big 12 in scoring offense. They're averaging over 30 points a game in the league, and you can't argue with that.
No, not at all. And really, to let Arizona hold them to 3, Blake. I to go back to the defense, early in that game, I thought was big. And how about Arizona's kicker? I mean, Brandon Aubrey 2.0. The announcer said he thinks he's good from 65. That kid had a boom.
Missed a big crucial one late in the second half though that really helped Tech late in the game. So he's a good kicker, not taking anything away from that kid, but he did have a big miss that was in Tech's favor. As a whole, TJ, and I referenced it earlier, another hill that I was going to die on. And I think I texted you about this the other day. Cincinnati, right? The response to falling behind proved the toughness. It proved the culture. It proved that they had turned a corner, right? I think that the win at Arizona, and TJ, I don't say this lightly, what I'm about to say, but I think this win at Arizona we could look back on this win as a program changing, program defining, national perception changing kind of game, right? Where you finally proved to yourselves and to your fan base and to the national media that you could go on the road and you could win a football game against a good team. That's something that McGuire's teams have not been able to say to this point. And I just think that the position that this puts you in at 3-0 in the league and in first place, and kind of in the driver's seat, because we're about to talk about this schedule a little bit, but just to prove to yourselves that you can go win on the road, I think we could look back on this win at the end of this year and going into next year and the years to come as kind of a program changing kind of win. And if you look at the history of college football, right, most of these programs that are trying to do what we do, right, to take that next step and jump to from being a middling program to an elite program in your own league, typically have a game or two that you can point to and you said, yeah, that's the game that things changed, right? That's the game that this coach was finally able to say, this is my program. And I think that could be this game for McGuire.
Well, I'm not going to argue with anything you just said because I do think this is the most important win in the McGuire era. And
other than Texas, other than beating Texas,
because it was on the road.
Okay, fair enough.
Because it was on the road. Okay, they beat Texas at home. They beat Oklahoma at home. Cool, right? Like those were good games. They were early on. He built
the one against Texas still has a special place for me because that was the quote unquote last time you were going to play him in Lubbock, right? I know we went to Austin last year and got taken to the woodshed, but
But considering
Anyway,
the
go
way
ahead.
this
Go ahead.
defense played, considering the way they've looked on the road, considering the way they played at Washington State, they came out, they were hungry, they were focused, they came out, laid the wood to Fafita and company, and man, they were prepared to play. We've talked about the penalties. We've talked about
Much better. Much better. 6 for 56.
yeah. So I mean, I'm very impressed with what they did this week.
The fourth down decision making the last 2 weeks has been like he finally threw the analytics to the side, right? He still uses it, but we seem to have made a shift in the program direction of, hey, we're not just going to go by the book, we're going to go by the feel of the game, right? The punting on like perfect example was late in that fourth quarter. They had a 4th and 1 from their own 40-yard line, right? That they could have very easily had gone for. And I think their analytics book probably would have said, you need to go for this because there are 8 minutes to go and it's 4th and 1, but they punted the football. They got to stop and then ended up winning them the football game. So it seems like they've turned the corner on a lot of things that we've been complaining about and yelling from the hilltops here that needed to change. And they're finally starting to implement those things. And look, 5-1, 3-0 in the Big 12.
I mean, I think at one point I was looking at the schedule and I was saying 7-1 going into Ames.
I think it's very, I mean, you hit the nail on the head of what I wanted to do, TJ, but you look at this schedule and it's hard not to sit there and go, man, like the path is there, right? There is a very clear path to Arlington. And you start to look at it, it's like, okay, you get a bye week this week, then you get Baylor at home. So you get to get healthy. Then you get Baylor at home, who's horrible. That's a game you should win. They're 0-3 in the league, 2-4 overall. They're probably going to fire their coach after the Tech game. So you get that one. Then you go to TCU in Fort Worth. Yes, it's on the road, but that's not a true road game. We all know that. Yeah, it's a road game in Fort Worth. I'll be there sporting red next to my wife in her purple, but we all know TCU's antics, right? That will not be a true road game. There will be plenty of Tech fans there. And look, TCU just got taken to the woodshed at home by Houston, who's the worst team in the league. So that's a game you got to feel confident about, right? TCU's defense is what Tech defenses used to be 10 years ago. It's horrible. It's a Dykes coach defense. Very much from the Leach era. Like you can score all day long on them. So then to your point, you got the tough game up in Ames, flip a coin. Then you get Colorado at home. And look, I know Colorado is 2-0. I'm not convinced. They should have lost to Baylor at home, right? And Baylor's not any good if they don't hit a Hail Mary, if Baylor doesn't forget how to cover a Hail Mary at the end of the game. So you got to like your chances in the Colorado game. Then they go to Stillwater. Historically, that's a really tough game. TJ, I don't think Oklahoma State's any good. I mean, West Virginia just went into Stillwater and beat them 38-14, and they're 0-3 in the league. And Gundy's got some problems because Alan Bowman can't play. And then you wrap it up with West Virginia at home, and that game against West Virginia could very well be a game. I mean, that could be a situation where winning you're in. If your only loss is Iowa State, I mean, there is a path, TJ, and it's hard to not be excited.
Definitely be excited here on the Nation's official podcast with TJ and Blake about the way the Red Raiders are playing football these days. And if you've been watching the pod this season, we couldn't always say that.
No.
I mean, the way this season started, we were comparing it to Mark Adams last season in basketball, where it was just loss after loss after loss, and we were like, "Is this going to be one of those? Is McGuire on the hot seat?" Now here we are, 5-1, 3-0 in the Big 12, and back to your perception on the national media. Got to give the College Game Day guys a shout out. They all picked Arizona, but
except for Marshawn, yeah,
my guy, Money Marshawn Lynch. He knew better. He
even said it. He's like, man, he even said it. He was like, man, I got Texas Tech in this one after all the other guys that picked Arizona.
Loved it.
Yeah, TJ, it's really, really encouraging to see. And look, what we said after the Washington State game was not unfair. When you squeaked by and survived a game against Abilene Christian that, frankly, you should have lost, right? And then you got taken to the woodshed by Washington State. It was hard to be very confident in this group. You know, we were sitting here saying, look out, North Texas might come in here and beat your butt in Lubbock, and then the wheels could really fall off. But to this coaching staff's credit, to this team's credit, they have rallied around really, in my opinion, kind of two players that have been the glue for this year, and that's your running back and that's your quarterback. And Taj is getting all the accolades and deservedly so. I'm not taking anything away from Taj, but I'm a Baron Morton guy. And TJ, I think these last 4 weeks, Baron has been outstanding. He's top 10 in the country in passing. He's leading the Big 12 in all the important statistical categories except QBR. And the only reason that his QBR is low is because they're not throwing touchdowns. They're running for touchdowns. So that stat gets bumped a lot by throwing touchdowns. And because they're running it in as opposed to throwing it in, the QBR is low. But everything else about Morton, the metrics are there. The eye test is there. That throw at the end of the first half to Douglas down the sideline, TJ, that's one of the best throws you're going to see from a college quarterback. I mean, that was 55 yards in the air, in stride to a guy over on his back shoulder where the defender couldn't get to it. I mean, that's an NFL throw. So credit to this team, credit to this coaching staff, and let's enjoy the ride the rest of the way. Because, like I said, man, I'm excited. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but man, it's hard to look at that and say, and I mean, where'd they lose other than Iowa State if they continue to play the way they are? So it's exciting.
Definitely exciting in Red Raider land. And Blake, before we get out of here, I just want to get your thoughts because, man, this Adidas basketball team got some uniforms, my friend.
They are slick. They are really, really good. I think they've got the throwback double T on all three of them in one place or another. And it's just further evidence that Patrick did us a solid getting us out of Under Armour and into Adidas, because the football uniforms look way better. The basketball uniforms look way better. I'm sure the baseball uniforms in spring will look much better than they have. So, yeah, the basketball uniforms, if you haven't seen them yet, go search the Tech basketball uniforms because they are slick, particularly those white uniforms. Those are really, really nice. So it's going to be fun basketball season.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We're
around the corner.
We're about to be busy here, Blake, because
it's around the corner.
Football and basketball for us to talk about, and then of course basketball takes us all the way into the spring. So we are very excited about that.
Did you see their Big 12 schedule for basketball?
I saw Arizona twice and Houston twice.
Yeah, that's and at Kansas. You play Baylor once and Kansas once. Baylor and Lubbock at KU, but yeah. 2 against Arizona, 2 against Houston. It's going to be a tough basketball schedule for sure.
And then I did read an article in the Lubbock Avalanche Journal today that talked about that situation with McCaslin. I don't know if you saw that maybe on Twitter, or not, but he basically came out and said he's got unfinished business here. He wasn't going to leave. If Drew would have gone to Kentucky, he wasn't going to leave Baylor. He loves it here. His family loves it here. He thinks he can win a national championship here. So great things. And it's to be expected, right? What's he going to say? Yeah, I was going to take the Baylor job. But still, it's nice to hear that McCaslin came out and is confident in his program here.
So 2 things on that. And I hadn't seen that article, but that's awesome to hear. A, are we entirely sure that he would have taken the Baylor job? And if he was even their top candidate, right? I think Jerome Tang probably would have been in the mix for that as well. Another former Baylor assistant, but would he have taken the job? I don't know. I mean, he did graduate from Baylor, but he also has a degree from Tech. His wife's from Tech. And then to your point, yeah, sure, Baylor could have offered him, but does Baylor have more resources than Tech? That would be news to me. So it wouldn't have been a money issue. I can tell you that. I mean, he might have used if he's smart, and he is a smart guy and his agent's smart, they would have used the Baylor job to get a raise from Tech, and I would have been fine with that. But to your point, TJ, about what he said, he can win a national championship at Tech. I mean, we were one defensive stop away from winning a national championship, and I think the program's in a better state now than it was then, in terms of the resources and the facilities and everything else. So you're in the best league. You're in a top 5 or 6 job in the best league. There's no excuse. I mean, you can win here in basketball. So I'm happy to hear him say that.
So, well, Blake, we have an off week. So are we going to do a pod next week?
We'll see, man. We certainly can. There might.
So do we get Baylor Blake's bets?
Whatever the line is, bet Tech. I don't think Baylor's any good. I mean, that's just me being bluntly honest with it and being nice, but I think Arnada gets fired after the Tech game. That's my prediction. I think that we're the team that puts them out to pasture, and Baylor moves on.
All right, my friend. Well, Not going to keep you too long here tonight, as our Kansas City Chiefs are out there playing tonight
Yes, sir.
against
Got to go see
the New
Patrick.
Orleans Saints. We're going to get that on the tube and sit back and have a good
Root,
Monday night.
root for Mahomes, as
Yeah,
we always do.
no
So
doubt about that. I've got big fantasy implications with Xavier
ah,
Worthy. So, Racey Rice is out. See what
that hurts.
Worthy can get me to 5-0.
There you
So,
go. That's a heck of a good start.
yes, sir. Well, that being said, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in, as always, to the nation's official podcast. And Blake, how we always get out of here?
Rack 'em.
Rack 'em. We'll talk to you guys next time on the nation's official podcast.